But this man was going to do something that no one could afford, and it would still happen.
John, with the human factors figures, John wanted the human element within the science and technology theme. People say that the inspiration came from the Vancouver Games that had very similar figures in it.
I don't think their vision was anywhere near as well thought out or as well executed, and is not even remembered. You cannot find any reference, or unless you really dig a lot, of fiberglass similar types sculptures at Vancouver, whereas in Brisbane it screams out at you as to the importance of it.
It's that thing that John does where, Ken Cato told me a story where he would get frustrated by the budget. And he said, if they want one flag, I'll give them 100. I'll find that way to do. So the type of thing of the figures is Vancouver had a few of them, but John had the place full of them. And the other thing about the Underwood, the Artbuster figures, which is absolutely brilliant, which is what Artbusters were able to do, is how lifelike they are. I think they're incredibly lifelike. There is wonder in it because you want to know whether they are actually real or not. So I think, and the technology that John Underwood and his team and Lindy Gottlieb achieved by covering the actors and the people that they used to pose, first of all with a resin mix, I think it was. And there were difficulties with the pose too, because you couldn't do the whole body at once because, and you couldn't do it in part. They had to do it in parts. So it was a very complex process that they did, and then made the mould for the that from which they made the fiberglass figures. So I think it's an incredible achievement that they were. And as you said,
the Artbuster thing, some people have said that they're not true sculptors, not true artwork. Now, I look at the clothes that the individuals were dressed up in, the poses, and I just think they scream of artistic intent, because it's more than just a model sitting down being covered in plaster of Paris and then a reverse mold made of it and then a fiberglass art piece popped out of it. There's real art in the whole thing. I mean, it's quite amazing, and John Underwood is really a true genius. And again, I've got off the topic today. Sorry about that.
I think that's a good point. I think that both the Johns were sat on the edge. They used art. They were artists. But what they produced had enormous popular appeal. They were entertainers in many ways. John was about theatre. He was about John would say about the Victorian Arts or the Victorian Arts Centre, but also about the Melbourne International Festival. You need audiences. You have to bring people into these things. And I think the very important thing about John Underwood's work is that it is incredibly skillful, arts-based work. It is an art form, and it does fit into the technology, the art technologies of the day, of the realism that was in art at the day, where people were using fiberglass to make very, very realistic figures. But with the human factors figures, and I think some of the more populist type of sculptures that John included in Expo is a communication to people, bringing people in, seducing them into it and giving them experiences they haven't had before. Yeah. And taking art out of galleries and into people's everyday lives. And that's where I think the two Johns came together. But I haven't had the chance to speak to John Underwood yet, but I suspect I've looked at it and I think the two share very similar values.
Absolutely.
Thing that I learned, although money is incredibly important as an exchange for, it's a receipt for energy really, but this man was going to do something that no one could afford and it would still happen. And that's what he put us through. And because of his charm and his integrity and his style and what he wanted to achieve and his sights that were so high, that it actually drew everybody into that vortex. And it was an incredible